Hi, this is the Abundant Show with
Faith.
and Verity. Today we're going to talk about getting what you want using the gift of giving and receiving. And I'm not talking about physical gifts, but non-physical gifts also. Like some of them are service, waiting on someone, compliments, spending quality time with someone, touch, and then of course gifts, which is physical, but there's a lot of ways to give non-physically. Giving and receiving is energy, and energy is in all of us. And how to understand more about what energy is, when you feel love towards someone, they feel it with energy. It is unseen but felt. When you walk in a room, somebody will walk in a room and they'll either be full of negative or positive energy, and the people in the room can feel that energy. So in order to receive more in our life, we need to circulate energy. So Faith, what do you think about that, circulating energy?
Well, I think that we can look toward that universal law of attraction. In what we put out, we get back. And so we're always, as we go around in our life, manifesting through energy. And manifesting means, for those of you who don't know, it means whatever you're thinking, feeling, doing, saying at any given moment. So we all manifest at all times. But the main idea is to use the law of attraction and consciously use it so that we manifest, or we have things come to us in our lives that are positive and things that we want. So in order to, why it's important to circulate energy is to fulfill the law of attraction, to have the energy go out and have it come back in. And then, so things like money is energy. Money is also opportunity. Love is energy. And then the reverse, hatred, is also energy. And like I said before, what you put out is what you get back. And there's a little, I wouldn't say it's a little caveat, but it's more of a little bit of a refinement here. Sometimes you get what you put out, but then you also get what you're expecting and think you deserve. For example, if you're doing a lot of loving, kind acts for people, but on some deep level you think you're not deserving of receiving love in return, then when people or actions or the universe tries to return to you good things in your life, you may block it, you may self-sabotage it, so maybe it doesn't come to you in the fullest way possible because you're the one putting brakes on it. You're the one that's kind of stopping it from fully manifesting in your life because you don't believe that you're worthy of good things. And that's the reason why I talk a lot in our classes about the idea about self-esteem, about how to believe in yourself.
Yeah, but then you have that one friend that gives, you mentioned about giving rides.
Oh, yes, right. So I have a friend, just having a conversation with her during lunch, and she said, I've always given people rides. When people need a ride, I've always given people rides. And then she was complaining about just recently why people were just not giving her rides. And I said, well, it could be due to a couple of different things. Number one, maybe the law of attraction doesn't necessarily work on a one-to-one correlation in terms of I'm doing one good thing for somebody and I'm going to get that one good thing back. And in a certain time period, in the same way they did it. Like if I gave somebody a compliment, somebody's going to turn around and give me a compliment maybe in the next day or so. If I'm working really hard in my personal life in terms of like relationships, I expect that back. Or if I'm working really hard in work, I expect that back. But that doesn't happen that way because the universe doesn't view our energy that way. Like what Verity said, energy is universal. So when they send it out, it doesn't earmark it as, this is like personal relationship energy and it's going to come back in the personal relationship realm. It's going to come back in whatever way that it seeps back into your life.
But it's like in the positive way, she gave rides and she kind of expects something positive back.
Right.
But then I know someone that is not in the positive state, they're in the negative state. So everything in their life is, I expect only negativity come my way, but I'm a good person. I don't understand why I only get negative things happening to me and get beaten down all the time. And it's because of the thought. The thought is, like you went back, not deserving or victim. But
when in reality, she does have a lot of good things in her life, but she doesn't want to recognize it, right?
Yeah, when I point them out, she's like, well, I got to go, because she's not even there where she can recognize it yet. And
so she's comfortable in that victim space. She wants to be, she views herself as a victim, would you say?
Right.
Yeah.
So, but when you're constantly in the last couple paragraphs talk about universe, when the universe, can you let people know what you mean when you say that, the universe?
Universe is kind of hard to define, but it's really everything that's around us. It's more the concept that everything is interconnected, and that everything is made out of energy. So when I say the universe, for example, doesn't recognize your work in one area of your life, if you expect the stuff to come back to you in the same area, it's more of a universal. It crosses all boundaries. It crosses all people, all living things, some inanimate objects too. It just is something that permeates every single thing in where we are, the environment that we live in.
Right. Thank you for that. Because I know some people might not. Their idea of universe might be different.
Right.
So, but with giving and receiving, the importance of your intention behind giving and receiving is the key. Why is your intention important behind giving and receiving? Because of the energy behind it. What are some other examples?
So how would we define intention, Verity?
Well, when someone gives you a gift and then you run out and you get one begrudgingly, or when you give a gift expecting one back immediately, you're putting a negative spin into giving and receiving. And I mean, I know we're all guilty of it. Like during the holidays, you get a gift from someone, you're like, oh, darn it, I have to go run out and get one. I got to get this person. I didn't think of getting this person a gift. And you're frustrated, but you go do it, and then you hand it to the person. I mean, I'm sure on some level they energetically know you gave a gift because they gave you one. And sometimes I find it more beautiful, like when someone gives you a gift, but you don't give it back because you just fully accept the fact that they gave you a gift, and that was beautiful, but it doesn't mean you have to repay it.
And your full acceptance is actually a gift to the giver.
Exactly.
Versus like if I was to give you a compliment, you said, no, not really, I'm not really like that. And you make the giver of the compliment feel kind of half fulfilled, and you don't give them the satisfaction of having experience of you fully accepting that compliment.
Right. Or example, I've known a friend forever, and she told me years ago, and it stuck with me, and I've done it ever since. She goes, every time I try to treat you to anything or give you anything, you're like, no. And you're basically saying to the universe, no, I'm not deserving. And so she says, why don't you just allow the giver to give, because you're robbing them of their joy.
Yes.
And ever since then, when someone goes, I want to treat you to lunch, I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. And it was uncomfortable for a while, but it's like, why am I going to rob them of that joy?
Yes.
Because they're not going to, most of the time, people are not going to offer do something for you unless they really want to. You need to give with an open heart and don't concentrate on what you'll get back. The more you do that, the more you also will have abundance in your life. An example is Faith took me to a detox. I really needed this detox that she took me to, and it was very helpful. A lot of healing work from it. And when I went to go pay, she said, no, I already paid for you, and it wasn't cheap. And I was like, wow, thank you. I mean, that was so loving and needed and giving, and I was just so taken back. And she said, "No, Faith, tell why."
Well, I had recently gone on a weekend getaway with some friends, and they had paid for my share of the housing. So I took that money and I just paid it forward because I knew that Verity really needed it in her life at that time, and I thought it would really benefit her.
Yeah, and about a month later, I went out to a restaurant with a bunch of people, and I picked up the tab for everybody because I just said, I got that detox, and I want to pay it forward. So it's a snowball effect.
And it just increases, and it's a beautiful thing to see when you can trace it like that.
Right.
To see the positive energy continuing. And so I think the law of giving and receiving that we've been talking about is like a tide. So, you don't necessarily watch the tide come in and out. You just assume that it's there. So when you give something out, you're assuming, and you're not even assuming, you know that it's going to come back in. You just don't know necessarily when or how high it'll be, or, what areas the tide will be high, tide will be low, that sort of thing. You don't worry about it. You just know the tide goes out and it comes back in. So that's how I view the law of giving and receiving. And that's how I think what Verity is trying to say also is not to think too much about what you're going to get from it. So just like the tide, you're not thinking about, okay, is the tide going to carry out something and it's going to carry back in? You're just knowing it's there. So when you're giving it something, maybe in the back of your mind you're thinking about that, kind of like the tide, but you're not necessarily focusing on that intention of getting something back.
Well, and also breath is so natural for us to breathe.
You're not counting your breaths. You're not saying, okay, now I'm going to take an intake. Now I'm going to take an exhale. No one does that really.
Right. The inhale of your breath is like a receiving, and the exhale of your breath is giving.
Yes.
But it's natural and unconscious.
Yes.
And it should be peaceful, unconscious,
unforced,
normal, forced, and that's how a good way to give and receive.
Yeah, that's a good attitude going into it. Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk the difference between really giving and receiving, and there's 3 different kinds of givers. Think about yourself, and do you give unconditionally, no strings attached, no fear behind it? Or are you doing it conditionally and fear that you're going to run out? Do you give to receive? Is it calculated? Like, well, if I do this, and I'm going to get that.
Like a quid pro quo situation, yeah.
Yeah, or is it give to gain? A taker, one that always takes and never gives. It's like, what can I get? What can I get? I don't want to give. They just want to take. So think about it. Which one are you? And which one, Faith, do you think creates abundance, and why?
Well, definitely giving unconditionally with no strings attached and no fear attached. That's going to be the best option for creating abundance easily and frequently.
Yeah, and then I have a friend that, had a really rough childhood and ran away at 16 to New York and lived under the staircase with rats, was homeless, and then worked his way up and understood what that felt like. And today, like many, many, many years later, he's abundant. But what he does every Friday morning is he goes out to the homeless and different places in the city and gives out money, or gives out clothes he doesn't want anymore, or sometimes he can tell energetically that somebody wants to work for the money, so he'll put like a used Starbucks that he just drank and put on the floor of his car, this passenger side, and say, hey, can you open my door and throw that Starbucks away and I'll give you some money? And then he gives money, and he just loves the 2 things.
And he does that because
1, it reminds him of where he's come from. 2, the joy in their eyes. It makes him feel like he's helping. And 3, he says so many people tithe. He doesn't. This is his tithe.
His way of giving back.
He really he gives unconditionally. he's giving with note that they're not going to do anything for him in return, but they do a lot for him in his return. They give him a lot of joy.
Yeah.
And a reminder where he's come from too.
It's amazing the things that I've thought about with your story is the consistency, because you're saying every Friday morning he does that. And then you said even if his bank account dips, he still does it.
No matter how broke he might get, because he's not always well off. He goes up and down.
Mm-hmm.
But
I think it's
he's
him.
not fear. There's no fear.
Right. I think it's him continually feeling abundant, and that's why he does it. And that's a reminder to him also, like, I do feel abundant. I'm so much better off than my lowest of low days, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And he's always he's definitely the person that always sees the glass full, not half empty.
Yeah.
No matter what's going on.
Yeah. And so I think that's important too. I think that's just mentally just sets him for the week, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing. But why does he do that with the Starbucks and then ask them to throw it away versus other people? Why does he do that?
He's really good at reading people, and he can tell that some of the people do not want just a handout. They want to work for they still, no matter how homeless they are, they want to work for it.
So you're saying that he's also giving them self-esteem.
Yeah.
So not just like,
job,
hey, I'm just going to toss
job.
you. Yeah, I'm just not going to toss you some money, but you're going to work for it, and therefore you're going to feel good about receiving this thing.
Right.
Because he knows.
Intuitively, he kind of picks the people he knows that is important to him. I don't know how. Ask anyone that knows him, and they're like, "Wow, this person knows how to read people." And I think it's a life
He probably honed
hard
it.
knock.
Right. He
Hard
had to
knock
hone
life.
that. Yeah. And so, springboarding off of what you just said about feeling bad or good about receiving, I think there's 5 reasons we feel bad about the act of receiving. And check with yourself internally if you can relate to any of the following. So, do you feel bad about receiving because it's a fear of connection? Like if you receive something from someone, you have to thank them, you have to connect with them some way, show some gratitude. Also, maybe it's letting go of control because you're accepting something, receiving something, and that's not something that maybe you anticipated. Maybe there's a fear of strings attached. Okay, if someone gives me something, do they want something in return? Also, and I have a friend like this, it's hard to give him any physical gifts because I think he just doesn't believe that he's deserving his self-worth. He's just not feeling deserving. So I give him something, he tries to deflect it. He actually gets angry at me.
Yeah, and sometimes people feel it's selfish to receive.
Yes, and that's the last one, the selfish to receive. There might be some guilt attached. So check in with yourself and see if any of those scenarios apply to you.
Yeah, and then it's very important when you do receive to say thank you and move on. Like when I write a check, I write thank you because I'm thanking whoever did whatever, or sign on a credit card like at a restaurant or something. Write thank you on it. So write thank you. Just always constantly saying thank you. It's a energetic form of gratitude and appreciation, which brings more abundance. If you want joy, give joy. If you want love, give love. If you want more abundance, then give more. Just like that example about the person I know giving.
Yeah, and even if he doesn't have a lot of cash, he still gives away clothing he doesn't want, right? So there could be ways that are not directly related to money that he's giving.
Right. And so giving and receiving
without fear.
And tune into yourself on how does giving and receiving make you feel. It's very important that you go through life when people give and receive to pay attention to how you are feeling at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can energetically also read how that other person feels.
Right. You can also adjust. I find once you adjust your energy, the other person also naturally adjusts their energy.
Right.
So sometimes I found myself, if someone gives me a compliment, I may try to deflect it. But then I catch myself and I just say, just thank you. And then that person's energy also changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that it's a true circle versus something that I truncate to myself, but it's a true circle. It goes from that person to me, and then it goes out from me to the other person, and the cycle is complete. It's just so much of a more complete, better experience, more loving experience, I would say.
Right.
Yeah. And so continuing on to the idea that you don't necessarily need money to give, we had a class in person and we wrote on the board, we asked people for examples of ways that you can give without spending money. And we had quite a few, right? We wrote on the board quite a few. Some ideas, like we mentioned before, being generous with your compliments. I know Verity likes to make friends with everyone she meets, so somebody at the cash register at the grocery store, and just getting to know them, not treating them like a robot or something, but just asking their name or how they're doing, right?
Or making sure, a lot of people don't even acknowledge them.
Yes.
And when you acknowledge them, when my daughter was around 7, I guess, we went to the grocery store, and she said, "How are you doing today?" And the woman was blown away. She goes, "I am so surprised you asked me. I haven't been asked that all day." And it's like, and it took a child,
treating her like a human being. Yeah.
I think we get so used to with our computers and stuff that we're not realizing that there's another human being there.
Right, exactly. And also spending time with someone. Sometimes time is the most precious thing you can give to somebody.
Yeah.
And that doesn't cost any money. So, Verity, why is it important to give to others?
Well, like we said earlier, it's important to give to others because it's a loving act. It's a generous act. It's kind. That's what.
And so in turn, like, I would ask myself, why is it important to receive? For me, receiving is just completing the cycle of energy, like we talked about in the very beginning, completing the cycle of energy, replenishing the energy, and receiving completely, like I said in my compliment example, in order to fully benefit. So that might seem really simple. You're like, of course, yeah, you have to receive a gift. But I think that a lot of times energetically, like we talked about, it's not completely, fully receiving in terms of a compliment, or maybe someone gives you a gift, or someone does something for you. Just take the time to acknowledge them, to thank them, and then move on. That just gives the energy a better absorption. I believe the loving feeling between the two parties lasts longer, and also validates the other person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we have.
I think we've talked a lot about
giving and receiving.
Yes.
Go out there and do it.
So
and pay attention to what you're doing when you give and receive.
So in class, we usually have like what we call like homework, something to do for the next class, but we would just share it with you guys. So it's something for you to do, think about, and you can even journal about this, or you can just note and see how it works for you. And pay attention when you give a gift during this time or another time. Ask yourself, why am I giving this, and what is my intention? And how do I feel when I give it? And how do I feel when I receive a gift, when that happens? So it's just bringing self-awareness to that, and using self-awareness to use the law of attraction to get the best things, what you want out of life. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Verity.
Thank you, Faith.
See you next time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.